Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Sugar, and I'm really excited to be here on behalf of the GLAAD Kids and Family Council to lead a conversation about the Mitchells versus the Machines. So, to introduce myself briefly, I've been working in TV animation since 2009, first as a writer-storyboarder on Adventure Time, and then as the creator and showrunner of Steven Universe. When I entered the industry, LGBTQIA+ content for kids was really not considered acceptable. And for the last decade, many of us have been working behind the scenes to break down those barriers and to make those stories possible. As a queer and genderqueer artist, a fire was really lit in me to do this because the exclusion of queer characters in stories and in media for kids has really alarming implications. By leaving these stories out of media for kids, queer kids are essentially told during their formative years that they don't or shouldn't exist. And so that's why it was so exciting for me to see in this film a central character be confirmed as queer on screen. This is a big first, and it speaks to the barriers that are being broken by the people that I'm about to introduce. So I'd like to welcome the director and co-writer of the film, Michael Rianda. And I'd like to welcome the voice of Katie Mitchell, Abbi Jacobson. Woo! And I'd like to welcome the producers, Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much to all of you for coming. So I'd like to dive right into some questions. My first one is for Mike.
Okay.
So in developing Katie's character, why was her queerness a priority for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think it was just because of the whole North Star of the movie. We were trying to be really observational and truthful. And so when we were, Katie Mitchell is a 17-year-old girl going to art school, and we all went to art school. And in observing our sort of, wonderful weirdo friends that are girls, a lot of them were queer. And we were sort of, Katie has these little lightning bolt earrings, and our friend Ko had these lightning bolt earrings. And just as we were developing the character more and more, people kept asking, Katie seems gay. Is she gay? And so it just became something that was we felt like we really needed to address, and it was kind of undeniable. So me and my co-writer Jeff are, these cis white bros, and we're I don't know, can we do this? And so we sat down with, there was a lot of queer crew members on the movie, and we sat down with them and we said, can we do this? And they're like, yes, do it, of course. What you have an opportunity, go, and they were just make sure, talk to people like us and talk to people from the community and make sure that you're doing it right. And it was really important. One of our artists, Lizzie, was like, my hair is blonde and my eyes are green and I like girls, and those are all just parts of me, and they're not something that creates conflict in my life usually. So it shouldn't create conflict in the movie. You don't want to be the first thing to tell a kid that that's a problem in their life. You want it to be like, oh, this is normal, and everyone supports it. And another one of our crew members was like, if I saw this as a little girl, somebody on the screen that looked like me, that would mean so much to me. And sorry, I'm a very emotional person, so I'm going to break a couple times, but I'm just going to try to power through. And she was like, maybe if I saw that, I would feel less alone as a kid. And we're like, oh my God, what are we crazy? We have to do this. And both because it was right for the movie, and we wanted to make our friends proud,
Right.
Thank you.
So how did you go about bringing this to the studio and defending it? I'm sure that it wasn't easy, so how did you win that fight?
First of all, I just want to thank Sony for, it was really important to us, and it was really important to the crew, and talking to them, they're like, we have to make it explicit. We can't just dance around it. And so we put it in the movie, and Sony, God bless them, were like, let's do it. But I will say it wasn't without people who were, there were some people in the studio that were nervous, and it was something that we had to, I wouldn't say argue for, but sort of convince everyone. And I think the way we did it was we sort of, it's like, how do you assume the best of everyone? And how do you say, and bring them in and say, hey, we all think representation matters, and we all think this is right? And they're like, right, good. And then it's like, so we should do this, right? Let's all join hands and do this. And nobody wants to take their hand and be like, actually, I am a bigot. I like money and I don't like people's feeling their humanity honored. So nobody wanted to do that. And I think the biggest thing that was important was that in talking to those queer members of the crew, we were always talking to them back and forth and seeing like, do you guys feel good? Whatever. And they wrote us these emails just being like, oh my God, this would mean so much to me. And to anyone who was feeling like nervous about it, we would just send them those emails. Like, look how meaningful this would be. And if you can, I have one. And it was really, again, I'm really gonna struggle to get through this thing, but
we're all gonna cry during this part.
But it was really wonderful. And this isn't a writer. This is one of our layout artists. She said, and I'll try to paraphrase it to keep it short. She said, when I came out in the 90s, I understood that I would only be safe if I remained relatively quiet about who I was and made sure I didn't hold hands with my partner when I was in public. When I met my fiance in 2014, I understand that we could only get kind of married through a ceremony that would only be valid in California. When I started working in animation, I understood that I would never be able to work on a film with characters that represented who I was. I made a sad peace with each of these facts while working to bring about a world in which they were no longer true. This is a chance we cannot pass up, a chance to have a film represent a part of myself in a community that I assume would always have to be hidden from feature animation. I want to be a part of a movie in a studio who is on the right side of history. Being gay in this country used to literally be illegal. Police raids on bars, blacklisting from industries, public shaming, jail time illegal. It was through the incredibly courageous work of generations of LGBTQ people, many of whom literally gave their lives, that the world has changed profoundly for the better. But our rights are always under attack, especially from a terrifying right-wing fringe that is gaining power and influence in this country. We do not want to silence ourselves for fear of a bigoted few. We don't want to cave to their world. We have to be on the side of what is right and just. We just need the backbone to do it. Be that backbone. And that's by Elizabeth Nichols. And it was really wonderful that she sort of inspired us and sort of challenged us to say, you're the people in the room. There's no they. It's just you. And you can either choose to disappoint me and my whole community, or you can sort of go the other way and sort of show a gay kid in a theater that they deserve to be the protagonist of their own story, And so it was really just in having a conversation with the community and showing it to anyone who was nervous and showing them that humanity and saying, do you reject this? And they said no.
A small part of that was at some point we stopped waiting for an answer and just started doing it.
Yes, totally.
We just wrote it and we put it and we drew it and we started cutting it into the movie and seeing what felt right. And we even oversteered a little bit. And, we just started doing it. And then you were like, now you're showing it to someone and going like, here it is. Are you really going to make us cut something out? Nobody wanted to do that.
Absolutely. That's incredible. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, no. It's Lizzie Nichols. She's great.
I was curious, Abbi, the character, I totally agree. It felt very authentic and realistic to have this be just a holistic part of this creative character. And I was wondering about, with the performance of the character, since you are a creator and a showrunner, what was it like to be voicing a character who's also a content creator?
I relate so much to Katie in that regard. I went to art school too and drew almost constantly as a kid. Filmmaking wasn't my thing at first, but just the constant sort of craving to create things, the abundance of drawing pads all over the room and everything. And I wildly relate to her sort of feeling like that. What do you call it? When she feels her emotions in visually.
Yeah, like the Katie vision.
I was just like, oh my goodness, like that doesn't happen exactly the same way, but like I feel like I was like, God, that imagination, like I felt that way as a kid, and like you feel things so big, and yeah, as a content creator, Katie uses a lot of her life in her films, and I tend to do that as well. Yeah.
And also just one point is like every improv you did, I always felt was like so inspired by the fact that you were currently like directing and running a show, so you were like directing Manchi and you're like, Manchi, there's no time for coffee right now, bud. We got to keep a schedule. We got to hit this by 3.
We would go for so long on those little directing runs. I do want to say real quick on the last question wasn't directed at me, but it was so interesting, the process. I mean, I don't even know when I came in the process, like, or how long ago that was, because COVID has drastically skewed my time. But years ago, and you guys were working on that for years before that, but I remember having a conversation about Katie being queer, and I think I had already been privy to her being queer, like in the thing. I was like, she is though, right? It was so, to someone else who had said this to their point, I feel like if I had seen this character on screen as a kid, I mean, I'm queer, and I don't even know if you knew that when you cast me, but I
didn't.
I came into my queerness came to know it pretty late in life. And I feel like if I had seen a film like this with this kind of character, I mean, I don't even know what impact that would have had on me. It's pretty powerful, guys.
Well, I'm also curious. I have a question for Phil and Chris. So you have been working in feature animation since the 2000s. So what is it that you've seen change from that time until now that's made this actually become possible? Because a character like Katie is totally unprecedented. So clearly, this has changed.
Yeah, I mean, I think the old thinking many years ago was, we were making these movies that are very expensive, and so they have to be this big tent that doesn't offend anybody and is very generic and general and nothing interesting in it whatsoever. And now I think people have gotten hip to the fact that the more it reflects the real world and the more people can see themselves in characters and the more it's just a reflection of real life, the more specific it is, the more interesting it is to audiences, and that it actually makes good business sense to make something that with person that looks or feels or sounds like you in it, or someone you know and love.
And we're a big part of it is the generosity of people like Rebecca and who have made things that represent this community really well, and made and emboldened people like us to go like, well, it's all, I mean, and embolden the audience. I mean, the thing that's like really interesting for us is the more things we make, the more we realize that the audience is down to go basically anywhere with you. And I think one of the insidious things is worrying that somehow there's going to be like one person in like the fifth row that's going to make us stink, and you can't play to that person, and like when we made like Spider-Man like black and speak Spanish, like nobody, we were kind of like, are people going to be mad? And everybody was psyched. And so I think that, and we made like a psychedelic like Lego movie, and people were down for that. And so what I think we've learned over the time, over the years is like, we have to really start being really, remembering that the audience is smart and wants things that reflect the world that it lives in, and that we have to honor them by being equally generous.
And you want a studio making decisions out of greed and not fear. When they're making decisions out of fear, you get something terrible. And when you have them making stuff out of greed, you get to push boundaries and do things that haven't been done before. And I want to also echo thanks to Sony for not being chicken shit on this, and it was a big deal.
Absolutely. I think what really becomes clear just talking about this is how much this is coming from artists, right? People are really driving this change. I think even before some of the latest work, just the fact that some of your earlier work was really pushing the boundaries of just what a TV show could be, what an animated show could be, what an animated film could be, and also including the team. And one of the things I was really excited to talk about is that we're all people who have worked in TV and also in feature. So how are the challenges different in terms of, getting queer content on screen between TV and feature. I know that Gravity Falls also experienced pushback on LGBTQIA plus content.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure that that's something you were already familiar with when you started working on this film.
At least on our end, we were just sort of kind of hopeful and mostly right in that, hopefully we had moved past that, and like the work you've done, and all these other wonderful creators have done sort of made it seem like, well, look, we're already doing it. We're already doing it. What's the problem? So that was like one of the things that I think made it easier. Sort of, 5-6 years later from whenever we were trying to do it on Gravity Falls. And I think to sort of Phil's point was really right. It's like you don't. It doesn't make any sense to ask, like, can we please represent this community, please? You just do it because, of course, it's like 2020. Just make it. And then if somebody really has a problem with it, you could say, like, well, do you want to cut it? And they're like, no. And then, and then you sort of, and then it just goes out into the world.
Right, absolutely. And for all of you, have you felt that this feature experience has been different from your TV experience?
Yeah, I feel like in TV, because it can have a little more of a niche audience and still be successful. There is a little bit less of fear-based decision making. But I think that honestly, it wasn't a massive struggle to get this to happen. It was people were supportive of it, and everybody thought it was the right thing to do. And and it was important that we, showed a family positively supportive of Katie and set an example for other parents and that sort of thing. And everybody thought that was a good thing to put out into the world. And so there wasn't. I imagine if we had been doing this, even 5-10 years ago, it would have been a lot harder. But thankfully, everybody was really supportive.
That's incredible, and I think it really speaks to the work and the honesty of your crew and of everybody who's really been pushing for this. And also, I'd like to shout out to the GLAAD Kids and Family Council, who have been working on this for over a decade.
Yes.
So thank you so much to them. Thank you to Jeremy. Thank you so much, all of you, for having this conversation with me, and all of you for coming. And please enjoy the reception. Thank you so much.
Thank
you
for
Thank
coming,
you guys.
everybody.